Hey, Bobby Manning, Dome Theory. This is our interview this week with an old friend of mine, Jordan Rose from up in Syracuse. Jordan, I was just thinking, I was at the gym. I was writing down some notes for this interview while I was lifting and doing whatever else I was doing there. And I've had so many, this is kind of the premise of this podcast, having Syracuse people on to some degree. But I was
Mhm.
thinking that I could almost exclusively have Syracuse people on this show and it would work. I'd have
Yeah,
enough
that'd be
people.
dope.
I'd be able to fill out 52 weeks a year. Like, there's that many people from Syracuse that are doing things out there that got something
Yeah.
to say. It'd be easy.
Yeah, nah, man. Q's, the Q's Connect is strong, and definitely, from the alum to everybody. Yeah, I think, it's a strong connection up here. So that's definitely something that you could do. It's a strong possibility.
All right. He's Jordan Rose. If you don't know him, he writes at Complex. He most recently started writing at Billboard. He's written at various music publications, and I knew him from probably I was a junior at Syracuse at that time. Mixtape Magazine, which you ran this past year, were part of for your whole time up there at Syracuse, our hip hop magazine up there that Regina Cho and some others started. And it's a great publication. The physical editions were awesome. The artwork was great. The writing was fantastic. And that's obviously what Jordan's doing and going to do. And he is graduating this weekend from Syracuse as part of the class of
Um,
2021. So congrats to him for that.
yeah, man. It's dope. It's like I said before. It feels like I don't know if it's crazy to think about like holistically, but super excited, super ready. Yeah, man, that was a great introduction, by the way. That was
Thank you.
that was dope.
I've been doing this since 2016. I've mastered the introduction. That was the only thing I was good at right away. And now I'm probably good at a few other things too, hopefully. But we're talking J. Cole. J. Cole's The
Yes.
Offseason just came out. J. Cole is playing in Africa with the Rwanda Patriot Basketball Club, which is interesting. We're going to talk about everything J. Cole. And it's so interesting to me because I'm working on a little blog right now. Cole's legacy, musical career, like his individual music career, just given what he's done with Dreamville, the other artists that he's put on, the other people that he's helped raise up in this game. So for the last 3-4 years, even back before KOD, probably, you almost were in the space with Cole where people were still waiting for his music. He was putting out good singles. He obviously had an
Mhm.
album people were excited about on KOD. But after, say, Forest Hills Drive or so, people became more aware of him putting out Dreamville compilation albums, being a huge feature artist, and
Mhm.
even just this label exec and everything else he was doing in this place, that place, that his individual career almost got overlooked a little bit. I wasn't crazy about KOD, but I feel like the off season coming out here, I know Regina, our friend there, said it was almost like going back to his mixtape days, the way it felt when it was coming out, the hype
Yeah.
that this one had, and just how good it was. Like, we're not doing a review here necessarily. That's not what we do on the show, but it was really good. That's all I got to say about it when in terms of like evaluating it. But how did you feel about the lead up to this one and just how it came out?
Man, look, obviously, like I'm a stan. Let me put a disclaimer out there. I'm a stan, but I also like, try to be non-biased when I write and whatnot. But honestly, just the entire because Cole does rollouts, but he doesn't really do, especially recently, he doesn't really do traditional rollouts. You know what I mean? So this from the very beginning, like first I initially thought after he like tweeted, off season coming in a week, I was like, okay, like this is just gonna be he's gonna drop it, and that's just gonna be what it is. But after I watched the doc that he dropped, the off season doc, that's when I really knew this was going to be different. And then the LA Leakers freestyle was really like the LA Leakers freestyle for me. Like I got the LA Leakers freestyle on my phone. Like I've been listening to that along with the album just because of like it like from the beat from the first beat, the 93 till infinity, which he already used on the warm up or Friday Night Lights. I think it was either or, right? For
Mm-hmm.
Till Infinity, I think that's Friday Night Lights. And it just harkened back to all of these feelings from mixtape Cole and a type of rapping that I haven't heard him do in such a long time. Cause like, KOD, For Your Eyes Only are very narrative-driven albums. I mean, and so was 2014 Forest Hills Drive, but like 2014 Forest Hills Drive felt more, he had more rapidy rap lyrical bars on 2014 Forest Hills Drive. KOD told the full story. For Your Eyes Only told just solely a story, really. And that's nothing wrong with that. But it was like, it was very much so focused on the story and the narrative. And that's what the bars are driven by. But this, especially when he was saying, I'm going to go back to my mixtape days, like, this felt like Friday Night Lights. It felt like, a warm-up type of vibe in the sense of 39 minutes, 11 songs, straight bars all the way through. Short, sweet, to the point, super digestible. Like there was no moment wasted. There was no song wasted, and that's what I really appreciated. And it kind of like, and it's funny because when I was talking to Dreamville's creative director, he said to me that Cole went in. Well, basically, he said that like there was no real mysteries behind this. Like everything that Cole was saying leading up to this in the rollout was exactly what it was. Like he said he was going to go back to his mixtape days. He said he's been back in the gym, literally both ways, in the gym shooting and in the gym, in the studio writing. And he's been just refining his pen over the last 3 years since KOD has dropped. And even some of these songs, like he said in the doc, that like he's been writing a lot of these songs for a long time. Like Middle Child, which came out like a year ago, 2 years ago now, maybe a year ago, was meant to be on the Offseason. But he just said, I'm just going to drop it at that point rather than hold it for the Offseason. But that just kind of tells me how long he's been holding a lot of this music. Which is exciting, as a Cole stan, as someone who, is sad that we have kind of this roadmap to the end of his career set in front of us. This moment was dope. I really, really, really liked it. I've been spinning it all week, and it's one of those projects where I just feel like it revived the feeling for a lot of Cole fans who came in maybe at Friday Night Lights or warm up. It revived that feeling that we once had. I felt super nostalgic, honestly.
Complex was doing some cool stuff on this album, and obviously you just mentioned that you wrote that piece about the cover art and its creation, the creative direction of the album, which I think when you think of that, when you think of Rollout, which you talked about, tours, all these different things that surround an album, which we've seen like The Weeknd do cool stuff with that. I think various artists have really dug deep on how they're going to put their albums out there, what it looks like, what the cover art is, of course, besides Gambino last year for whatever reason decided not to do anything. But that's become a big deal in this game, is that kind of stuff. And I love how you dove into that. I love how another writer over at Complex was talking about the basketball stuff that's coming out coincidentally here. It feels like that's part of the rollout. We'll get to that in a second, but I don't really know what he's aiming to do with that. It just feels to me like it is part of the rollout. Like we're talking Offseason, we're talking his basketball brand, which I don't think any rapper, at least in recent history, like Freddie Gibbs drops a lot of sports references, but like people don't look at him as like the sports rapper.
Right.
People look at J. Cole as the basketball rapper at this point, with like his affiliation with the Hornets and the gear that he wears there, and just him being a walk-on at St. John's, and like, talking about picking basketball or music and that kind of stuff. And just he had a million basketball references on this album too, and he always has. So I think he's done a good job branding that as his album. But I'm going to throw up your piece here on Complex, have you talk about it a little bit and what you got out of his creative director there. His name was Chad Griffith. Shot the cover art there with the fire on the basketball hoop, J. Cole in the shadows. I loved it. I love the cover art. That's always something I'm interested in too. There's been a lot of great cover art over the years, ones that have changed in many ways, like Kanye's with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and The Life of Pablo and such. I'm thinking other iconic album covers too in recent memory. You're talking about.
Yeah, there's a few, man. There's, Watch the Throne is kind of one that sticks out in my head. Immediately, just kind of that. I'm forgetting the name of the actual like piece designed by Virgil. Honestly, it's so funny, like, because people clowned Virgil for the What cover was it? Where it was
West
really
Side Gun.
yes. I mean, no, the West Side Gun one was fire, but there was one that like he was like a
Oh,
meme. I forget whose album it was where he was literally a meme and he had to redesign it because no one liked it.
I know what you're talking about too.
Yeah, it's
I
just
know
I
he
can't.
did the West Side Gun album too, though.
Yeah, that look, and that's what I was getting to. I love the West Side Gun one. Yeah, there's been a lot of really fire cover art coming out, and that's why because literally so Chad Griffith did the cover
Oh,
art.
Pop Smoke.
Oh,
That's
Pop
what it
Smoke,
was.
that's what it
Yeah.
was. Yeah. It was Pop Smoke, and
Let me
everybody
throw it.
was
That one right now.
that wasn't his best work right there. It's so funny. I remember one of the Complex writers, Lee, when all this was happening, he wrote a piece on all of Virgil's cover art, just as like a refresher, because everybody was like, why is Virgil doing cover art? And like a lot of people didn't realize Virgil does cover art. You know what I mean? Like he's been doing it for a while. So that was a really good informative piece that people should check out. But so Chad Griffith, he did the cover art for the warm up, and the person who did this cover art was Felton Brown. He is the creative director of Dreamville. And the conversation we had was really enlightening, especially because I went into this. Obviously, we all saw the cover art, and as like the stands, and just everybody on Twitter was just hearkening it to the warm up, Friday Night Lights, even the come up. They were putting them all side by side, sideline story, and obviously noticing the trend in the basketball motifs in the album cover. And this was the first time he went back to that since sideline story. So that's what attracted me to the album cover. I obviously had 1,000 questions in my head as just fan theories about what the flaming basketball hoop represented, why he went back to the court, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why this is my favorite. This was probably my favorite interview I've done thus far. That's come
Ever.
out. It was just because like Felton, he's been with Cole since the come up. Like he met Cole basically. So this is what his story is, right? He's from Brooklyn. He's a graphic designer. And he used to have a hip hop blog. And when Cole dropped the come up back in like what, 04, 05, 07, I think. When Cole dropped the come up, his friend gave him a copy. And this is Cole's like first mixtape. And so he interviewed Cole about the come up. And they just remained friends after he did that initial interview. That was probably one of Cole's like first interviews for work that he's done. And then eventually he started working with Dreamville. He designed the cover art for Friday Night Lights. That's his first big cover that he designed. He did the cover art for 2014 Forest Hills Drive. He did the cover for...
That's another iconic one. I was going to mention that one. Forest
Yeah.
Hills Drive.
It's so funny, like, because 2014 Forest Hills Drive is like my second favorite Cole album. And in the credits, on the last song, Note to Self, like Cole is like an 8-minute song, and like he's just shouting out everybody who's been a part of the process of making the album. And he shouts out Felton, and he's like, Cole says, like you only do the classics, because he did the Friday Night Lights joint too. So that was like, we talked about that. It was a dope shout out. But yeah, he did that. He did For Your Eyes Only, and now he did this. And it was probably my favorite one, just because of he's so steeped in the history of Cole, and I'm so steeped in the history of Cole, that we really just spent a lot of the conversation, like even the stuff that I didn't write in, of just talking about Cole's maturation, his evolution, and how the cover and just this whole album reflects like where he is. So I loved writing this. It was fire.
You mentioned this album being, and he's talked about this in interviews too, possibly the beginning of the end for him as far as his career goes. And this is always a tricky thing, because like Logic retired last year, and then he just put out a couple songs. Nicki Minaj retired, then came back, and Jay-Z famously. And like the hip hop retirement I've talked about here on our Music Monday edition of the show is always not necessarily set in stone, I'll just say. Like,
Right.
guys are always saying they're retiring and then just bouncing right back. Like, I can't even think of a guy who actually just hung it up and left, at least like actually making the big announcement there, not like Mos Def or somebody, or Lauryn Hill, who just ended up putting out like one album and then not really doing much after that. But do you really think over the next couple of years we could see Cole's solo career at least come to a close?
I'll say this, I'm glad you mentioned Hove, because like I lean more towards him going a Hove route in the sense of, oh, what'd you say?
Business?
Well, yes, business, but also, and this is something that me and Felon talked about, I think, on the books. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in there. But like me and Felon talked about this too. It's like, the next project on the, fall off era that he outlined is It's a Boy. And I asked him, like, when I asked him, so going forward, are you going to design the cover art for the rest of the album, for the rest of the albums on this, farewell tour, if you will? And he was like, we're not even, like, currently they're in the ideation process and just kind of figuring out what's next. But they're really just enjoying the off season. So it's like the way that he has his timeline set up, Cole, is, like, this album drops now. Honestly, we wouldn't expect It's a Boy for another like 2 years.
Uh-huh.
After that, we probably wouldn't expect The Fall Off, like the final album in this, arc, in this trilogy that he set up. Wouldn't expect that for another 2 years after that. So that puts us at Cole at around 42, because he's 36 right now, or 40, right? If we just say, let's say each album, he drops an album every 2 years. And I feel like that fits into kind of the life cycle of all of the big three, in the sense of like Drake, I feel like has about, like, Certified Lover Boy, I really think he has one more album after this, and then he's probably going to chill out. Kendrick, probably the same thing, 2 or 3 more albums. So I feel like this, these three kings are all kind of are all in the same point in their careers. But with Cole, I see him more like leaning towards this Hove route of, Hove is like 52. Hasn't put out, he put out 444 when he was 49, 50.
Yeah.
So I see like Cole retiring, but probably like popping up, because like Hove just popped up on the DJ Khaled joint. He's showing up on the DMX posthumous project that's dropping, I think, next week. So it's like, I
never know.
Yeah, I see Cole just jumping on a lot of features. Maybe coming back for another solo project like Hove, but like I don't think that after the Fall Off era, once we get the Fall Off, like the album, I don't see him just stopping making music. Like I see him, he's been out of the public eye, he's fully leaned into that, but
no, and we've seen, like, if he's going to continue to empower these artists that he works with, or he tries to bring on more guys to the label and stuff like that, we've seen the power of what his features can do and his appearances and stuff like that. Shea Butter Baby, that epic, one of my favorite Cole verses ever is on the JIT album. The Get Off My Dick, Get Off My Dick.
Yeah. Jeez.
Them going back and forth the way they did there, it was like one of my favorite moments of his career. And that's really like what this album says to me at this point in his career. We've seen Cole have an epic mixtape run at the beginning of his career, try to do some more conceptual stuff with his life and another person's life with For Your Eyes Only and Forest Hills Drive. And then, of course, like really trying like a conceptual thing with KOD. But like you said at the beginning, I think like various people have said this about this album since it rolled out, is it's just helping his ass off. And that's really like, I don't know, some people would consider Cole a legend. Some people would just say he was really good. Some people, like my buddy Shea Serrano, don't like him at all. So like there's a very mixed grouping of opinions, and I know you're one of the people that just loves him. I'm probably somewhere in the middle of those two groups, but I think what no one can deny is he can really rap his ass off. He is great at talking about his own life, which I think beneath like the bars of this album, he makes some good commentary on his own life here. And ultimately his legacy to me is going to be the incredible people that he's put on. JID, Earth Gang, Ari Lennox, one of my favorite artists. And I just think like my time following him, and I'll get into a little bit of like your early life and getting into him too. Sitting in the car before high school, it was a freezing ass day, probably 0 degrees. We were thinking school might get canceled because it was so cold before school, and playing that album on my speaker in the car before we went in, because we used to have like a half-hour Forest Hills Drive. That was always my favorite album of his, because that was pretty late. I wasn't a day one with him. Seeing him live for that tour was special. Like you talked about the outro track, the way he integrated that and just the flow of the album into his tour, I thought was always impressive. I've seen him 3 times. But when I think of my favorite concert I've ever gone to, it was JID in Toronto, 2019. I think JID's going to become one of the best rappers out there. You could argue maybe he's already better than Cole. I don't know. I might argue that. But like Earth Gang pulled up to it. Smino was there, just the amount of guests, JID talking about his connection to Mac Miller, and that was just the best concert I've ever been to. I love Ari Lennox, and I think of all these people he's put on at this point, various other ones, Boss, Cause, Omen. That's his legacy to me. Like, you know, Kendrick's got a great label too. That label's been incredible with Top Dog there, but Cole himself, putting on artists the way he did to me, is always going to be his legacy. He's got a great solo career. He's got some really nice albums to me, and this one's one of them now. But that to me is going to be his legacy.
Yeah, man. Like, you know, that's what I think one of the most beautiful things about Dreamville is, because, like, you know, no knock to like any of the other labels like TDE or anything, but it's like, you know, TDE has like already very much solidified artists, like in the sense of like Schoolboy and SZA, and you know, and shout out Isaiah Rashad, who just dropped his really, or who I think it just dropped or it's about to drop his really great project. But it's like with Dreamville, it feels very like overarchingly balanced. Like you have obviously Cole, who's at the top, but then everybody else really fits in perfectly, from Ari to JID to Boz, Omen, Kaz, Luke, like every Earth Gang, like everybody just fits in perfectly. And I feel like their team is just really beautifully set up. And then you look at like, you know, Revenge of the Dreamers, like 1, 2, and 3, and you
that's an incredible album.
Yeah, like you see that like from the first Revenge of the Dreamers, where it was literally just I think Boz and Kaz, and I think Omen, to Revenge of the Dreamers 3, which is not just Dreamville, but everybody else, and really, you know, showcasing how you can make a collaborative album that is also really good and not just like a whole bunch of posse cuts that sound like all over the place. I really, really, really think the Revenge of the Dreamers series illustrates how balanced of a label Dreamville is, and how Cole's leadership has really guided a lot of these artists to the places that they are. Obviously, they have their talent, and then amplified by Cole. I just really like giving them their own shine. Now, I love how he doesn't show up on every one of their albums and then kind of takes the shine away from them. That's really dope.
He interacts so well with artists on his tracks, and I think what he did on Forest Hills Drive, the no features thing, which became like a meme around him, was special for the time. I think it was underrated how he had Ari Lennox on the next album there. That was my favorite track. That's probably one of my favorite tracks ever from him. But yeah, once you saw him on that Dreamville 3 album, interacting with the Baby and all these other guys that were on there, it's really good. And he does it again here on the Offseason. There's some quality features here. Cameron on the beginning, you have Boss, you have some other people on here. And the interaction between him and them is really good. Lil Baby, the track with him was nice. And you almost wonder, like, I go back to that KOD one where he was doing the, I'm sorry, just ridiculous thing with the Kill Edward. I didn't, I thought that was just like a little too deep. Maybe bringing on some like actual features there would have been made for a better album. So to me, like this Offseason, just the bars in here, the interaction with the other artists. I had a million lyrics wrote down, but you can just start like right from verse 1. Could put an M right on your head, you a Ouija brother now. And just there were moments throughout this album, and I could name a million lyrics, and if you want to drop some, you can, that he was just so witty. The pen game was incredible, to the point, sharp, and just really good songs, which again, like you don't need to make like To Pimp a Butterfly. You can just put out like a great album and have it be a great album because the writing's strong, the rapping's strong, the interaction on there is great.
Yeah, honestly, like this album reminded me of actually a much older song of his, False Prophets, where he was like, in the last verse, he was like, my lowest moments came from trying too hard to impress some people that couldn't care for more. Therefore, from here on out, my hair grow out. I care nothing about opinions. And like, that's what this reminded me of. Cause it was like, I think it was an interview he just did with KD for his podcast, where he was like, the best music he makes is when he's just honest about, like when he's just talking about things that he's lived, things that he knows, and also just kind of like flexing, like, KOD, For Your Eyes Only disappointed me in the sense that I missed the young Cole who felt like he had to, who was flexing all the time, who felt like he had to assert his place on the throne. I felt like For Your Eyes Only and KOD were really like, and to his credit, it was him as just an adult, a father, someone who has a family now, not in the same place he was when he was making Born Sinner or 2014 Forest Hills Drive. I think he found out he was having a kid right after he finished 2014 Forest Hills Drive. So it's like you hear that difference, and I appreciate the maturity and I appreciate the growth as a person through that. But just as like the selfish part of me as a fan missed him, really talking like he used to. And so now he really brought that back, and that's one of the main reasons why I love this project so much, is because it's like he's flexing, like, even on the freestyle, rest assured the best is here. And that's I know the lyrics because I've been listening to that LA Leakers freestyle religiously with this album. I basically treat that LA Leakers freestyle as the intro, and then I get into everything else on the album, because just the way he was rapping, it's just like, cold world, check the score. Man, who gives more without less reward? Like, it was dope and made me so happy, because a part of me thought maybe he was never going to rap like he used to again, in the sense of like his old days, because he's not in that point of his life anymore. But hearing it again here, man, it was great. It was great, man.
Strong production on here too, which you always got to consider. Like, I think he's handled his own production well throughout his career, and it happens
100%.
again here. Like 100 Mil, I love that whistle in the background. The Climb Back, I forgot about that song. I forgot that came out like a year ago, and like it reminded me that was a real solid single, because some of the like, I hate to say it, but like the Snow on the Bluff thing he did, like during the pandemic, I wasn't down with that. And like some of the other singles too, like I'm not the biggest, I give people credit to, it grew on me over time. The track that you mentioned off the Dreamville 3 that didn't make this album, what's it called? Middle Child. Yeah, that one grew on me. And then, he had a handful of others, but I forgot the Climb Back was great. Let Go of My Hand, I thought, was one of the coolest introspective tracks on the album. It's just, the whole thing's really good. And the production, I think I threw up the comment here, this guy comparing it to 80 Aliens. That's pretty valid to me, because it's sharp, witty, great rapping over some, beats that aren't like the center of attention, but really just lay like a nice carpet out there for him to roll on.
Right.
I want to hit on the basketball league. We don't have a ton of time here, but he's playing over there in Rwanda in the Basketball Africa League, which was interesting to me. You cover music, I cover sports. I've been reporting on that Basketball Africa League for a couple of years now. It was supposed to start last year in March. Best clubs from like 8 different countries out there in Africa. I wasn't 100% sure at first if it was going to be more of like a showcase thing, or like finding young talent out there and putting them on. Because obviously we've seen Joel Embiid, we've seen Pascal Siakam, we've seen some amazing players, even back to Hakeem, come from Africa, become NBA stars. But there's a lot of corruption too. There's a lot of exploitation. I thought Taco Fall, and I interviewed Taco Fall for this long-running story I'm hopefully eventually going to get out there about this league. And Taco's been big. He was on 60 Minutes actually talking about like the corruption, how like some guys like him get over the U.S., go to their prep schools, make it to college and get to the NBA. But a lot of people who come over are promised things that they don't even get to college, and then are kind of left with nothing just because of some promises that are made to them through like the Africa to U.S. pipeline. I'm still not 100% sure if this league's going to be a solution to that, even try to address it, or just try to get some more people in Africa watching the NBA. I don't really know what it's ultimately going to be, but it does feel like a great step in that direction. And the Undefeated put out a pretty good story this week about how J. Cole joining it. A lot of people are just going to be watching this to watch J. Cole, but hopefully he actually turns some eyeballs to the people who are playing in it as a whole. I know there's one former NBA player playing over there. Otherwise, just some guys who are still trying to push to the league or play in other parts of the world and or with those teams. They're actually clubs in Africa. So I don't know what the outcome of the league's going to be. I talked to Taco about it. I talked to some other guys of African descent and some people who came from Africa. And it still seems kind of up in the air what the league's eventually going to be. But it's a cool project. It's history. And J. Cole is going to draw some attention to it. Did you catch the game? What do you think J. Cole's goal getting out there is going to be? And
I saw parts of the game. And honestly, I feel like a big part of me, I applauded him for doing it, for obviously his whole, music background is steeped in all of this basketball, all these basketball motifs. So it's like for him to have actually played in a professional basketball game, I give him a huge round of applause.
Scored 3 points.
3 points, a putback, and like a technical free throw. I think the fact that he was able to check in and put a point in a professional game up was impressive, and I think a goal that he had for himself. I think he signed like a 3 to 6 game contract or something like that. So
all right. So he might not be sticking around. I mean, the tournament's not that long, so that actually could be the entirety of it. But
it's funny actually because after I interviewed Felton, he was like, I was like, this was like a few days before the album dropped, and I was like, so. Or like, what are your plans? Like, what are you guys gonna do? He's like, yo, Cole was in Rwanda. Cole was in Rwanda when the album dropped. Like, he was there.
Yeah, he had to train. He had to be in camp. He had to be in those exhibition games.
Yeah, which is just hilarious to me because it's like, yo, your album's dropping and you're really focused on this other passion of yours. So it's like, you have like, 2 Chainz rapper go to the league. You have stuff like that, but then you have someone who actually does it. And that's dope. I think that's dope. And I think it speaks to obviously the big, comparison everybody always says of, rappers want to be ball players want to be rappers. But then you have someone who actually does both for real. And I mean, you had others, like you had Master P and, people like that who have played professional basketball and also had a successful rap career. But it feels special from Cole's perspective, and it's interesting that you pointed out how he's bringing more eyes onto the basketball, the
Basketball Africa
African League, and I hope that maybe this could be a byproduct. Like him just being in more games could be a byproduct. Is this live?
No, this is this is the highlights. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. I mean, look, it's dope. I think this is dope. Because like you see him in the gym, you see him put in the work, you see him like practicing with like the NBA trainers and whatnot, getting up shots, and you see all the rappers do it, but then he's like really serious about it. And then it also harkens back to I think of Dame, honestly, when I'm watching this. Like I think of Dame, who no one takes him seriously. Like
Dame's good though. He's good.
Like, but Dame, has tracks with Lil Wayne. Like Dame, like has some legitimate tracks, but he's just people don't want to take him seriously because he's also really good at basketball. So they're like, stick to basketball. So I think it was dope that Cole included Dame on the outro of that one track. Like, I think that was really dope too because it brings it full circle of like I feel like Cole sees himself in Dame in a way in the sense that like no one took him seriously when he was like, I'm trying to play ball. Or like when he wrote that Players Tribune piece and was like, I want to try to get into the NBA. Like everybody was like, rap. But obviously this is a stepping stone, but just playing professionally, it was dope for me to see. And I hope that it just brings about more attention to the Basketball African League and just, I don't know, wherever he's still making music, so I'm glad he's not retiring from music to play basketball. But it's like, whatever this leads, I'm here for it because it's really just like a testament to everything he's always rapped about chasing your dreams and about, you know, never really giving up. So it's dope.
He looked good out there too, better than I expected. I didn't really know what to expect, frankly. Like if he came out and hit a bunch of shots, I would have been like, "Oh, all right, we heard he could shoot." But he was out there playing defense, rotating well,
Right.
you know, not trying to do too much, which I thought was important. Like he wasn't out there like Kobe trying to take every shot, which I guess you kind of have to do jumping onto the team for the first time out there, like weeks before the tournament gets started. So I'll be watching a lot of those games. I'll be continuing to watch him and seeing what he does beyond this album. But just a great, one of the most anticipated albums of 2021 so far. We'll see if a guy like Kendrick drops. Drake's been rumored to drop forever now. It's going to be a big summer with guys getting back on tour and stuff. We've been talking forever about like what the quarantine music scene is going to look like, and now it looks like the real world music scene's back again with festivals and everything else. So we'll hopefully talk to you some more here, Jordan. You got an interview coming up. Good luck with that. Check out his stuff on Complex. Check out his stuff on Billboard. Anything else you want to plug coming up?
We have, well, yeah, so a few interviews dropping soon. This interview that I'm doing right now has been like has been a piece that's been like a month in the works. This is the second interview of 3 interviews over the last month. So hopefully this is the last one, but it's something really dope and exciting that I'm excited to drop. Something should be dropping. I think I might have already dropped something dropping later today or tomorrow or sometime this week. Yeah, just a lot of dope stuff coming out. Music is on an up tilt right now. So it's exciting to see how everything is moving. I feel like now that Cole's dropped, it's kind of been the red flag. And Cole dropping, and now that touring is back, I feel like a lot of stuff is gonna start moving. I think Drake is getting ready.
I just bought some tickets today for a concert. I couldn't believe it. Duckworth.
I'm expecting a June 5th, first week of June release date for Drake. I'm expecting him to drop right as the summer begins. He might even drop the first day of summer. That's something he would do.
Well, some singles lining up over the next couple of weeks.
I see it. For sure. And honestly, that Seeing Green track off the Nicki mixtape that was brought to DSPs felt like a time to bring back to 2012. But like, you know, I'm excited. I'm excited for music. Thank you so much for having me on, man. This has been dope. I definitely want to return. This is fire.
For sure, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate you giving me some opportunities to write in college as well, which was always fun. And graduating Syracuse before me. We're graduating September 2020. You're doing it here in May, which is weird as hell. But good luck. Enjoy yourself this weekend. And we'll talk to you soon here on Dome Theory.
Appreciate it, man. Peace.